Now, the Raj Yoga fructifying, or the Raj Yoga in the second and fourth houses, caused by equal planets, fructifies in the early part of the person's life. This is true in the case of Bill Clinton. This is true in the case of, what's her name, Julia Roberts, whose chart we're going to look at today, where, she became, vastly wealthy before the age of 30, okay? And we're going to look at her chart today. A perfect illustration of these yogas. In her case, it was by Rashi Drishti that these planets were intermingling with each other. Okay. Now, another interesting yoga that's mentioned by Jaimini is that there is a trinal relationship between the Aruda Lagna and the Dharpada, or the Aruda of the seventh house. Or it could probably form if the Dharpada and the Aruda Lagna form and join in the same house. That means the person is getting cooperation from other people in that person's worldly activities, i.e. the Aruda Lagna. Now, here's a very interesting yoga too. I mentioned Venus and Moon forming together form Raj Yoga in any house, which is interesting to me too, because Venus Moon Yoga is also Rudra Yoga. That is, it causes death. However, I don't know how to relate, great wealth to death, but maybe it's along the lines that you're talking about.
Rudra Yoga is in Moon Mars, or Moon Venus. Both actually. One Chandramangala Yoga is supposed to also give wealth. The reason is that, it's kind of a mix of things. Mm-hmm. First of all, it tends to give you high blood pressure.
Moon Venus.
Yeah, and Moon Mars. Mm-hmm. And that's also driving you. Why did you get high blood pressure? Because you're seeking something, you're running for something.
Exactly.
Intensely, you were worried and you had a lot of anxiety. Working intensely towards wealth. You notice that Mars and Venus are the natural second and eighth lords in the zodiac. And when join the moon, this happens.
Right. Exactly. So that's the logic behind Rudra Yoga itself, for that matter. As a matter of fact, that forms verbatim in charts that I've seen. A person who had a chronic high blood pressure and finally at the age of 58 died of a heart attack. Very close conjunction of Moon Venus in his chart. And in his case, he wasn't so, passionately aggressive in the world to achieve wealth. Then again, maybe he had some sort of disposition that way that people didn't know about. But coming back to this, if the Moon Venus Yoga has aspects with the second and eighth house, or their lords, then a Dana Yoga forms. Keep this one in mind. This is a very powerful one. When it forms verbatim in the chart, the person is vastly wealthy. Just off the map wealth. Then again, he might be gaining that wealth through Venusian areas, as is the case with Hugh Hefner, who we'll talk about later. Very interesting chart he had. And so, again, the second house and the eighth house and its lord mutually aspecting the Moon-Venus conjunction causes exceptional wealth, according to Jaimini and according to practical experience. Now, if the lord of the second house occupies many beneficial vargas, that is in Vimshotak Bala, it's way up there on top of the charts, then wealth occurs. If the moon and Jupiter conjoin in the first or seventh house, aspected by benefics, then you have both wealth as well as Raj Yoga resulting. So this, what I've talked about so far, just sets the platform, sets the foundation for how we're going to analyze these charts. Yeah.
You say Vimshopak Bala?
Or Vargabala, Sapta Jabala. Did I say Vimshopak Bala? Yeah. In Sapta Jabala, or those breakdowns of balas based on Varga positions. Yes. Then the person gains wealth. So let's look at some charts here. Let's look at Bill Gates' chart. It's interesting that everybody who's been speaking at this conference sort of comes up with the same charts too. It's not like we have a conference together to decide what charts we're going to display. So, Bill Gates. Yeah, that's the time I use. Now, I think in Freedom's lecture, he was giving Bill Gates' chart using an earlier birth time. This birth time has been slightly adjusted to put the Sri Lagna in the sign of Taurus for reasons which I'm going to talk about right now. So Taurus is the Sri Lagna according to this birth time, 2121. Gemini is the Lagna. It also puts the Hora Lagna, which, by the way, is about wealth also, in the 7th house. So Sri Lagna in the sign of Taurus with Ketu there. Would you think that you should find a lot of Dana Yogas in the chart of Bill Gates? This is something we really have to take seriously in our study of Jyotish. If you see somebody extraordinary, by wealth, by greatness, by fame, by talent, or whatever, and you can't explain from his chart or her chart why that is, we have to go back to the books. Otherwise, we all just ought to, rent a hotel here for a week and just have a good time. Maybe have cocktails and have a party or something. But
we can invent new
do that
yoga.
too. What's that?
We can invent new yoga.
Anyway, you get my drift. So this is the researching astrologer. If something in the chart he or she can't figure out, we go to the books, we go to the classics, we email Sanjay or whatever, and find out why, what the story is. Okay, so let's look at Bill Gates. Can we figure out here why this person was so wealthy? He's actually the wealthiest person in the world now, so I understand.
About 6-7 years in a row.
Yeah. Well, he's got so many billions of dollars. If the stock market even coughs, he loses about maybe $100 million or something. So, what then to speak of if the stock market becomes healthy all of a sudden? So here you see, look at the chart first of all for any kinds of Raj yogas that exist. Can anybody give me a Raj yoga? Anybody except Visti? Look at the chart. What forms Raj yoga? What's that? Yes. Also, Viparit Raj Yoga is forming here. Saturn is Lord of the 8th, Venus is the Lord of the 12th, and Venus happens to be the Lord of the Sri Lagna. Okay. Now, so what kinds of reversals made Bill Gates all that powerful and wealthy? Well, first of all, it was the reversal of the IBM company, who invented the DOS operating system in the first place. Right, based upon which Microsoft built its Windows platform and its whole fortune.
Not exactly.
No.
No. IBM bought the DOS platform from Microsoft, and Microsoft bought it off Seattle Computers for much much.
Oh, that was explained the other day, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
Right.
One of the factors here is what we were taught the other day, is that there is a reversal in his 5th house. The sun in debility becomes the least effective planet, and Saturn in exaltation becomes the most effective planet. Now that's got to play some role.
Well, let's just say they all play a role. All three of them. Let's talk about that right now. How do they all three play a role? If a debilitated planet aspects a Sri Lagna, what happens? Wealth occurs. Well, do a little dance too, but let's just say they're all three aspecting. If an exalted planet aspects a Sri Lagna, then what happens? Wealth. So here you have a debilitated planet and an exalted planet aspecting the Sri Lagna. And these are by Rashi Drishti, which means it's very set very powerful karma this individual came into this life with, got to enjoy at some point. What point that is, we'll discover with Sudasa. Okay? What about Venus? Venus itself. Venus rules the Sri Lagna in Mula Trikona, aspects the Sri Lagna, along with an exalted planet and a debilitated planet. So the formation of Srimanta Yoga here is complete, is perfect. Now, any other kinds of yogas we can spell out? Lakshmi Yoga exists. Well,
Has Ahamkara together.
good.
One exalted, one debilitated.
We're good.
And aspects Sri Lanka, of course.
Right.
Has first lord and fifth lord together.
Right.
With the first lord exalted.
First Lord and the Fifth Lord aren't together, but anyway, that's a good observation. But in any case, that's right. Saturn is the Putra. The Saturn combined with the Putra Karaka. The ninth Lord, in other words, combined with the Putra Karaka and the Sri Lagna Lord, are forming Raj Yoga. Now, there's another Raj Yoga here, where there's a mutual aspect between the Amatya Karaka and the Lord of the 10th house. Like, has anybody heard of these yogas? Or are we introducing something new here? There's a relationship between the Lord of the 10th and the Amatya Karaka. There's a Raj Yoga. And it even goes further than that. The dispositor of the Lord of the 10th combined with the Amatya Karaka forms Raj Yoga. So what's the planet here? Jupiter rules the 10th house. Who's the Amatya Karaka? Venus. And they're mutually aspecting by Rashi Drishti. There's Raj Yoga there. So now, if you looked at this chart, would you be convinced that this person is, Bill Gates? I think you could say that some things are happening here that are pretty extraordinary from the wealth point of view. At least so far as these definitions we've been giving describe. Okay. And when it all comes to bear, we'll have to see when we go into the dashas. Another thing is that if Mercury is exalted in a Kendra and joins the Aruda Lagna, the person has to be extraordinarily successful in business. Furthermore, the moon is in the 7th from the Aruda Lagna. That forms another type of yoga for reputation. On top of that, you have Mercury and Venus, benefics in the 7th and 8th from the moon. Does anybody know what that yoga is called? You got to learn your yogas. Yes. Chandra Adi Yoga. Adi Yoga.
6, 7, and 8.
There should be benefics in 6th, 7th, and 8th. If there are at least 2 benefics in those positions or more, then Adi Yoga qualifies.
It's got that Jupiter in the 3rd house then.
What's that?
It's got that Jupiter in the 3rd house. Mana, whatever it's called.
Marana.
Marana Karaka.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very good. And so if the 10th Lord is in Marana Karaka, what does that tell you? 10th Lord also happens to be the Lord of the 7th.
Yeah.
Now what does it tell you? To the person's career, those who may be his opponents or those who may be his obstructors or enemies, go to the Marana Karaka graveyard. So there isn't too much who can defeat Bill Gates in terms of, control of this industry, at least so far anyway. That would have to speak to some power, absolutely. So let's go back here. So Adi Yoga, forms of benefics are in 6th, 7th, and 8th from the moon. There's another yoga called Parvat Yoga. So everybody's thinking, man, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the guy keeps harping on all these yogas. You know? These are actually, you know, to look at, to see what the strength of a chart is, the resiliency of a chart. You have to learn these yogas. As painstaking as it may be, like a few days ago, we were talking about Brahma Yoga and Dharya Yoga and Parvat Yoga and all these different yogas. Why? Because they consistently come up in the charts of all these very powerful, extraordinary people. What makes a person powerful and extraordinary? This is what we're trying to get at here today. Now, if there are benefics in Kendras, if Kendras have benefics and the 7th and 8th have no malefics, such yoga is called Parvat Yoga. So what does Narasimha give as the definition of that yoga? Fortunate, charitable, eloquent, easygoing, famous. I would say that Bill Gates, all those words describe who he is. At least so far as what we see in the news and so on.
Parvata means mountain. Person who's like a mountain.
No.
No doubt Bill Gates is like a mountain. There's nobody who can reach you.
Absolutely. Think of the strength of this person. What's the employee force for Microsoft? How many people are employed on behalf of this corporation? And how many people are really getting rich just working for Bill Gates? So Parvat Yoga should form in there somewhere along the line. You know, a mountain. Parvat is a mountain.
I think he probably has one of the largest charitable organizations.
He does.
Yes. You see
He does.
Jupiter and 12th Marul Lagna. This is what he's giving.
Right. It's a very good point, Vishti. The Jupiter there in the 12th and the Aruda Lagna. That, you know, he's giving tremendous amounts of money in charity. Of course, he's got a heck of a lot to give, for one thing.
It's a big tax write-off.
Plus that, he gets
Exactly.
he gets an excellent IRS deduction, absolutely.
Check this out, Lakshmi, you're perfectly right. You see this Sagittarius? The Badakesh is Jupiter in the Maranakraksthana in 12th Mayal. Look at the dasas. This is how he gets rid of his enemies. And
Very
this is
interesting.
also the time he's been doing the most charity.
Yeah. Well, in the Sagittarius Sudasha is the time when this
See?
charity thing started happening big time. Sagittarius
Yes.
Sudasha started in 1996.
Wow.
That foundation is giving away hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yes. It ensures that all these Badaks disappear. Look at that. Just disappearing.